Most people believe that bloating is just an annoyance. The pants feel tighter after dinner. The belly feels uncomfortable in the evening. The pattern comes and goes, day to day, week to week, and most adults learn to simply tolerate it as part of how their body has decided to behave. I used to view bloating in roughly that same way, until I started paying closer attention to the patterns of bloating that older adults brought into the clinic, almost as an afterthought, alongside their other concerns. The patterns that turned out to be telling much more important stories about gut health, about diet, about underlying conditions, and sometimes about issues that genuinely needed attention. Here is what almost no one explains in a typical doctor visit. Bloating is not a single thing. It is a signal, and the type of bloating, the timing of the bloating, the foods that trigger it, and the symptoms that accompany it all carry meaningful information about what is happening inside the digestive system. After 60, that information becomes especially valuable because the gut undergoes specific changes with age that influence digestion, the immune system, and even the brain in ways that the public conversation rarely addresses. Today, I am going to walk you through what bloating actually is, why it happens more often after 60, what the different patterns of bloating may be telling you, and the practical steps that often produce real improvement. This is not a video about quick fixes or trendy supplements. The gut is more complex than most popular discussions acknowledge. The goal is to give you a framework for understanding your own digestion and for recognizing when bloating is simply a sign of something easily addressed versus when it deserves more careful attention. Let me begin with what bloating actually is. The term is used loosely, but in medical conversation, it generally refers to the sensation of fullness, pressure, or distension in the abdomen, often accompanied by visible swelling of the belly. Bloating can arise from several different mechanisms. Excess gas in the intestines, produced by certain foods or by the bacteria that live in the gut. Slowed transit through the digestive tract, where food and waste move more slowly than they should. Fluid retention in the abdomen, which has different causes.
Feeling of fullness
Changes
and swelling
in the gut
your abdomen,
bacteria themselves, sometimes called dysbiosis, where the balance of bacterial populations shifts in ways that produce more gas or affect digestion. And in some cases, conditions affecting the abdominal organs themselves. Distinguishing between these mechanisms is what allows for a thoughtful approach, rather than just trying random remedies and hoping something works. Now let me describe what changes in the gut as the body ages. Several specific changes occur, and understanding them clarifies why bloating becomes more common in the years after 60. The first change is reduced production of stomach acid, which is partly a normal age-related change and partly a result of common medications such as proton pump inhibitors. Lower stomach acid means food is less thoroughly broken down before reaching the small intestine, which can affect both nutrient absorption and the bacterial populations downstream. The second change is slower movement through the digestive tract, sometimes called slowed motility. The muscles that move food through the system become less efficient with age, contributing to constipation and to bloating from delayed transit. The third change is shifts in the gut bacteria. The diverse, balanced bacterial community that supports good digestion in younger adults often becomes less diverse with age, with consequences for digestion, immune function, and even mood. The fourth change is increased sensitivity of the gut nerves, meaning that the same amount of gas or distension may be more uncomfortable than it would have been at a younger age. The fifth change is altered enzyme production, particularly the enzyme lactase that breaks down dairy. Many older adults develop some degree of lactose intolerance even if they tolerated dairy fine in earlier life. All of these changes can contribute to bloating, and most adults experience some combination of them. Let me discuss the most common patterns of bloating and what they may be telling you. The first pattern is bloating that occurs reliably after meals, particularly large meals or meals high in certain types of carbohydrates. This pattern often points toward issues with digesting specific food components. Common culprits include lactose in dairy, fructose in fruit and certain sweeteners, and a category of carbohydrates called FODMAPs that includes onions, garlic, certain beans, wheat, and various other foods. The pattern is most often functional rather than serious, but it can significantly affect quality of life. Identifying the specific triggers, often through a structured approach with a registered dietitian, can produce dramatic improvement. The second pattern is bloating that develops in the evening regardless of the day's eating, often accompanied by constipation. This pattern frequently relates to slowed transit and the accumulation of stool and gas in the colon over the course of the day. Adequate fiber, adequate hydration, regular physical activity, and attention to bathroom habits often improve this pattern. The third pattern is bloating accompanied by other symptoms such as abdominal pain, changes in bowel habits, weight loss, or blood in the stool. This pattern requires medical evaluation rather than self-management. While most causes are still benign, more serious conditions including inflammatory bowel disease, certain infections, and rarely cancers of the digestive tract can produce bloating with these accompanying features. Bloating that is new, persistent, severe, or accompanied by warning symptoms deserves prompt medical attention. Let me address several specific contributors to bloating that are particularly relevant for older adults. The first is constipation, which is extremely common after 60 and which often goes underaddressed because it is considered embarrassing or trivial. Constipation produces bloating both from accumulated stool and from increased gas as that stool ferments in the colon. Adequate fiber intake, ideally from food sources such as fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, and seeds, supports regular bowel function. Adequate fluid intake matters because fiber without fluid can actually worsen constipation. Regular physical activity helps maintain gut motility, and in some cases, specific medications or strategies under medical guidance are helpful. If constipation is persistent, severe, or new in onset, it deserves medical evaluation rather than just self-treatment with over-the-counter products, because the underlying causes can be important to identify. The second contributor is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, sometimes called SIBO. This is a condition where bacteria that should primarily live in the large intestine grow in larger numbers in the small intestine, where they produce gas as they ferment food before it has been fully digested. SIBO is more common with age, and it can produce significant bloating, often with associated diarrhea, constipation, or both. Diagnosis requires specific testing, and treatment typically involves a course of antibiotics combined with dietary changes. If bloating is severe, occurs reliably with meals, and has not responded to standard dietary adjustments, asking your doctor about evaluation for SIBO is reasonable. The third contributor is lactose intolerance, which often develops or worsens with age, even in people who consumed dairy without problems for decades. The body's production of lactase, the enzyme that breaks down lactose, naturally declines over time. Many older adults experience bloating, gas, and sometimes diarrhea after consuming dairy products without recognizing the connection because they have eaten dairy their whole lives. A simple trial of avoiding dairy for 2 to 3 weeks, then reintroducing it, often clarifies whether dairy is contributing to symptoms. Lactose-free dairy products, plant-based alternatives, or lactase enzyme supplements taken with dairy meals are reasonable strategies for those who identify dairy as a trigger. The fourth contributor involves medications. Many medications commonly prescribed to older adults can affect the digestive system. Opioid pain medications cause significant constipation. Calcium supplements, often taken for bone health, can cause constipation and bloating. Iron supplements frequently cause digestive symptoms. Certain blood pressure medications affect gut motility, and antibiotics, even when used appropriately, can disrupt the gut bacteria for weeks or months afterward. Reviewing your medication list with your doctor or pharmacist when bloating becomes a persistent issue can identify contributors that might be addressed. The fifth contributor is the relationship between stress, anxiety, and the gut. The connection between the brain and the digestive system is bidirectional and powerful. Stress affects gut motility, gut bacteria, and gut sensitivity. Many people notice that their bloating worsens during periods of stress, anxiety, or poor sleep, even when their diet has not changed. This is not imaginary. It reflects the genuine biological connection between the nervous system and the digestive system. Addressing stress through whatever methods work for the individual, whether exercise, meditation, social connection, or other strategies, often produces improvements in gut symptoms that no dietary change alone can achieve. Now let me discuss the gut microbiome, because it has become a topic of significant scientific interest and also a source of considerable marketing exaggeration. The microbiome refers to the community of bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms that live in the digestive tract. This community plays important roles in digestion, immune function, vitamin production, and increasingly recognized influences on mood and brain health. The microbiome changes with age, generally becoming less diverse and shifting in composition. Several factors influence microbiome health. A varied diet, particularly one rich in plant foods of many types, supports microbial diversity. Fermented foods such as yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, and kimchi contain beneficial bacteria and can contribute to gut health. Adequate fiber, which feeds the beneficial bacteria, is important. Avoiding unnecessary antibiotics protects the existing microbial community. Regular physical activity supports a healthier microbiome. The role of probiotic supplements is more nuanced. Some specific probiotic strains have evidence for specific conditions, but the general practice of taking unspecified probiotic supplements without a clear indication has weaker evidence than the marketing suggests. Working with a knowledgeable doctor or registered dietitian provides better guidance than choosing products based on packaging claims. Let me share a story that illustrates these principles. A gentleman in his early 70s came in with persistent bloating that had been getting steadily worse over the past 2 years. He had tried numerous over-the-counter products without lasting benefit. When we reviewed his situation in detail, several factors became apparent. His diet had become quite limited, with frequent consumption of dairy products, refined carbohydrates, and processed foods. He was on a calcium supplement for bone health and an iron supplement that had been started by another doctor and never reviewed. He had been on a proton pump inhibitor for reflux for over a decade, with no recent reassessment of whether it was still needed. He was less physically active than he had been a few years earlier, and he had been through a significant life stress in the past year. We made several changes together. His proton pump inhibitor was carefully tapered under medical guidance after we confirmed his reflux was no longer significantly active. His iron supplement was reviewed with his other doctor and discontinued, since his iron levels had normalized. He worked with a dietitian on a structured trial that identified lactose intolerance as a contributor and led to a more varied diet. He resumed daily walking and added gentle stretching. Over 3 months, his bloating improved substantially. His digestion felt more normal than it had in years. None of the individual changes was dramatic, but the cumulative effect was significant. His story is instructive because it reflects what often actually works for chronic bloating in older adults. Multiple small contributors addressed together with patience over weeks and months, not a single magic intervention. Let me offer 4 practical questions worth raising with your doctor about persistent bloating. The first question: given my age and my symptoms, what specific causes of bloating should we be considering, and what testing, if any, would be appropriate? The second question: are any of my current medications likely contributing to my digestive symptoms? And if so, are there alternatives or modifications worth considering? The third question: would a referral to a gastroenterologist or a registered dietitian be appropriate at this stage? The fourth question: what dietary and lifestyle changes would you recommend trying first, and how long should I give them before evaluating whether they are working? Before closing, let me highlight several warning signs that warrant prompt medical attention rather than continued home management. Bloating that is new and persistent, particularly in someone who has not previously had this symptom, deserves evaluation. Bloating accompanied by unintended weight loss is concerning and should be evaluated promptly. Bloating with severe abdominal pain, particularly pain that wakes you from sleep, requires medical attention. Changes in bowel habits that are persistent and new, including new constipation, new diarrhea, or alternating patterns, deserve evaluation. Blood in the stool, whether bright red or dark, requires medical assessment. Difficulty swallowing, persistent nausea or vomiting, or feeling unusually full after small meals are symptoms that warrant prompt evaluation. Any of these can be signs of conditions where early diagnosis substantially affects outcomes, and waiting can sometimes lead to worse results. The broader message of this video is that the gut deserves attention as a system, not as a collection of isolated symptoms. The digestive tract influences nutrition, immunity, mood, energy, and overall well-being in ways that the public conversation is only beginning to fully appreciate. After 60, when so many other systems begin to require more thoughtful care, the gut is no exception. The good news is that many of the most effective interventions for gut health are accessible, low cost, and within the control of the individual. A varied, plant-rich diet, adequate fiber and fluid, regular physical activity, attention to medications and their effects, stress management, periodic conversation with a doctor about symptoms that persist. None of these are dramatic. All of them, applied consistently, support a digestive system that functions well into the later decades of life. If you have been quietly tolerating bloating, constipation, or other digestive symptoms for months or years, please consider that the body may be telling you something worth listening to. The symptoms are often addressable, and the improvement that comes from finally addressing them frequently extends beyond the digestive symptoms themselves. Better digestion often means better energy, better mood, better sleep, and better overall sense of well-being. The gut is connected to so many other systems that improving its function tends to ripple outward in ways that matter. Let me also briefly mention a topic that comes up often: the role of food sensitivities and elimination diets. Many people experiment with eliminating gluten, dairy, sugar, or other categories of food in an attempt to identify triggers for digestive symptoms. Done thoughtfully, with guidance from a registered dietitian and clear reintroduction phases, elimination diets can identify genuine triggers and produce real improvement. Done casually, without structure, they can lead to overly restrictive eating that produces nutritional gaps and rarely identifies the actual culprits. If you suspect specific foods are causing problems, a structured approach with professional guidance is far more likely to produce useful answers than an open-ended trial of eliminating various foods one at a time. Another topic worth addressing briefly is the role of meal timing and eating patterns. Many older adults find that eating smaller meals more frequently throughout the day produces less bloating than eating 2 or 3 large meals. Others find the opposite, that giving the digestive system longer breaks between meals reduces symptoms. There is no single right answer, and the best pattern often varies by individual. Paying attention to your own patterns over a few weeks, perhaps keeping a brief note of what you ate, when you ate, and how you felt afterward, can reveal patterns that are not obvious otherwise. This kind of self-observation, combined with input from a knowledgeable doctor or dietitian, often produces better personalized recommendations than any general advice could. The role of chewing and eating speed also deserves brief mention, because it is frequently overlooked. Eating too quickly, eating while distracted, or not chewing thoroughly all contribute to swallowing more air and to less efficient initial digestion in the mouth. Both of these factors can contribute to bloating. Slowing down at meals, putting down utensils between bites, and chewing more thoroughly are simple practices that often make a noticeable difference, particularly for older adults whose digestive systems are slightly less robust than they once were. A brief note on alcohol is also worth including. Alcohol can affect the digestive system in several ways, including direct irritation of the stomach and intestines, alteration of gut bacteria, and effects on liver function that can ripple back to digestion. Many older adults notice that even moderate alcohol consumption produces more digestive symptoms than it did at younger ages. If bloating is a persistent concern and alcohol is part of regular routine, a trial of reduced or eliminated alcohol for a few weeks often clarifies whether it is contributing to symptoms. Everything shared today is general medical information based on published gastroenterology, nutrition, and geriatrics research. Individual situations vary considerably, and any persistent or concerning digestive symptoms should be evaluated by your own doctor or a gastroenterologist. They know your history, your medications, and the full context that no general discussion can capture. That conversation, careful and informed, is exactly where good digestive care begins. Take care of your gut, pay attention to its signals, and give it the consistent, thoughtful support that allows it to keep doing its essential work for many years to come.